Hello and welcome to the How Kung Fu Changed My Life podcast with me, Sifu James Marsh. Today we have Sifu Shaun Rawcliffe. He's an extremely experienced instructor. He's been teaching under Ip Chun, son of Ip Man, since 1989, and he's got experience in the close protection world. So we get into a lot of stories about his time in Saudi Arabia, his time in Hong Kong, and how he's been teaching in the UK. So enjoy the show. So, Sifu Shaun Rawcliffe, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thanks for the invite. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to get you on because obviously you're one of the most experienced instructors in the UK, have a long
That means old, you mean?
no, committed. Um,
Probably should be.
yeah, I just wanted to sort of hear your story really and just sort of have it down, so that people can refer to it, maybe be inspired a little bit by it. So, I mean, tell me sort of your earliest memory about martial arts and where it
Ooh,
starts.
my earliest memory of martial arts. I think, like a lot of people, being bullied at school and wanting to do something about it. Simple as that. I was the short, stocky kid in the class, bit of an outsider, a bit quieter than everybody else, and therefore got picked on. I know it happens, and kind of wanted to do something about it. Um, I remember being given the advice by my parents of, stand up to the bullies. So I did. I got a good kicking for doing it, and it didn't seem like the best advice at the time. They did, to be fair, they probably did start to then pick on somewhere else. But at the time, rather than them just backing off, I just got a good hiding. So I decided to go into martial arts, and I went into judo. I lasted nearly 6 weeks in judo because the cute blonde girl that I really fancied threw me on my arse. And after that, judo was rubbish, obviously. 'Cause my ego took a beating more than my body. Where I lived in North Yorkshire at the time, there wasn't really a lot of choices. So it was judo. There was a Shotokan school, karate school, Shukakai school. So I kind of started in the karate route. Um, but it was good, and I have no criticism at all. But it didn't give me what I wanted. It was a lot of the stuff felt very choreographed, and the katas felt very disjointed, and then the competitions felt a little bit false. And that's purely because I was looking for self-defense and not any criticism of what I was doing. And then so I got a bit disillusioned. Again, not because of what I was being taught, because of what I was wanting out of it. And I kind of went into by the time I was 15, 16 or whatever, I'd met up with a group of friends that were doing different types of martial arts. And so I'd travel across to where some of them were teaching. I'd travel across to where they were teaching, and we just batter hell out of each other for after class. So there was a Thai boxing, there was a Kaishin Kai karate guy, there was a jiu-jitsu guy, there was a judo guy, and they run their own classes. And then afterwards, we'd all get together and just punch lumps out of each other and just see what it was all about. And then I went into, I suppose you might call it full contact kickboxing. American kickboxing was at the time. So I thought, well, at least that's going to give me a little bit more realism. And I enjoyed it, but then I got very badly injured. I was showboating and being an idiot because that's what teenagers do. I went to do an axe kick on the shoulder of this guy who, I don't know, very disrespectfully moved out of the way. My boot caught on the top rope, so he decided, with my boot trapped on the top rope, to sweep my leg. Although I was reasonably flexible at the time, I wasn't that flexible, and I severed one of my hamstrings completely, ripped it off the bone
Oh my
connection.
God.
Um, and so I was looking for something to do while recovering, and I just had to come across an advert for a Wing Chun school, which I'd never heard of. I kind of, I kind of thought the Wing Chun came on the menu with 32 with chips and rice or something. I wasn't not a clue what that was. And so I went along. He sold to me by Bruce Lee did it. I'm like, yep, that's it. I'm going to learn that. It'll be fantastic. But I felt because of the way that you're much more upright and your posture is vertical, it wasn't really affecting my hamstring too badly. So my view was, I'll do this before I get back into my kickboxing, my karate, whatever else. And I kind of never did. Um, Life got in the way, and at the age of 18, I found myself homeless. Went on a bit of a tour around the world. Ended up meeting a guy who was a close protection officer who was working out of Saudi Arabia, and he was like, oh, I'll get you a job. And I'm like, yeah, right. And every day he'd turn up, we'd do some training. He'd done Wing Chun in Hong Kong. Wasn't an instructor, but he trained in Hong Kong. So he was sort of, me and him were just doing a little bit. And my skill was very, very low. Um, but it was good training. We were training on the beach in the sun in North Africa, actually. And he said, "Oh, I'll get you a job in bodyguarding." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." It was a bit like a bromance every day. It's like, "I'll get you a job, yeah, whatever." But it was genuine, and I'd got nothing to go back to the UK for, so I was like, "Okay." So I ended up going out to Saudi Arabia, and he was the one that really truly introduced me to Wing Chun because he'd got a certain set of skills that I wanted, and it all came down to the fact that in Saudi Arabia, I was working with a firearm on my hip. I got 9mm Browning on my hip, so his view when I said he said, "What do you train?" I said, "Well, mostly do karate." And he kind of went, "Oh, bless." I'm like, that's not the respect I was expecting. But basically, what he meant was, your karate is good for doing what they do, but you've got a 9mm on your hip. When somebody presents a threat at what I'd call long range, kicking, long range punching, you're going to shoot them in the head. But when they get this
Mm.
close before they present the threat, your Moshigeri and your Maigeri and all your, it ain't going to work. But your Wing Chun at close range, brilliant. And so that kind of swayed me onto Wing Chun more than anything else as a supplement to close protection with a firearm. And that was 1979, 1970. I never looked back.
Wow. It's interesting because so many people like to criticize, Kung Fu or Wing Chun as not being practical, but actually you've come up, said a very practical point there, in terms of like when someone's right up against your face, your firearm is not useful. And so you need something that is actually, going to, address that problem, right?
And you're right. A lot of people go Wing Chun isn't practical, and my view is, well, for what? How do you know? We see these things on social media where Wing Chun's gone and fought an MMA fighter and they lose, and I look at it and go, yeah, of course you did. Of course you're going to lose. I was having a conversation only last night in the class, and somebody sort of saying, a newbie, new student, oh yeah, really keen and dedicated, and Wing Chun's going to be the best thing sliced bread. Is Wing Chun better than XYZ style? I went, no, it's not. But and I think as we know, you've got to understand that Wing Chun is a toolkit. It's not. I don't class it as a style. It's not stylized. It's a set of tools, and we extrapolate from those tools what we need at that moment in time. And we don't use the technique we learned on Wednesday because we learnt it. We use it if it's the right thing to do. And it's got a certain set of uses and it's got a certain set of restrictions. And those restrictions are rules. So, if you have the way I tried to explain it to this new student, you've got a tiger and you've got a shark. Both of those are extreme predators, violently dangerous. So which is going to win? Well, it depends where you are. If I throw the tiger in the water, my money's on the shark every day. Shark on the land, I am swapping allegiance like there's no tomorrow. If a Wing Chun guy gets on a mat with a judo guy or jiu-jitsu guy or in the ring with a boxer and has to apply their rules, you are going to lose. If you take the other guy out into the car park and have no rules, and it's not even a sparring match because sparring isn't real. I've never met somebody on the street that stands there and goes, right, what we're going to do is they just come at you like they're not coming in protective for themselves. Um, but if somebody just comes flying at you, we have a toolkit that will provide for that. But it's going to be stamped, I mean, in the close protection world, I learned very quickly if you take their support mechanism out and you snap their knee in half, even a one-legged world Olympic champion is not to keep up with me running away. If you hit them to the sternum where you stun the diaphragm so it goes into protective mode, or you hit them in the throat where they stop breathing for seconds, they go into survival mode. You smack them in the nose, smack them in the eye, smack them around the temple, disorientate their visualization. If they can't hit you, they can't see you, they can't hit you. So 3 points of defense, and none of which I'm allowed to do in a ring or in a mat or in a you know etc., etc. And it's know your territory, it's know your toolkit, know your limitations, and be true to yourself. That's Wing
Mm.
Chun for me. It's not a style, and I'm
Mm.
sure you're exactly the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Yeah, everything's context dependent, isn't it? So I
Absolutely.
mean, it's very people like to shortcut thinking, don't they? Well, if it doesn't work in MMA, therefore it's useless. It's like there's way more complicated than that. But I mean, I was interested, like, how did your close protection either feed into your Wing Chun, or how did your Wing Chun feed into close protection? Like, how did they affect each other?
I think they are totally separate and yet they're highly integrated. Totally separate because they're two separate skills if you take it that way. So, for example, when I started teaching close protection to mentoring people coming in, and I was helping businesses run courses as part of it, you'd get, they'd advertise close protection course. I mean, I'm going back to maybe 20 years when it was kind of on the front cover of martial art magazines and all this sort of thing. And you'd get doormen and you'd get that kind of, big, powerful individuals come in, thinking that what they'd done tied into it, and it couldn't be further apart. Or you get a karate guy come in or a judo guy or whatever else, jiu-jitsu guy come in, and they think, well, I've done that, therefore. And the two are completely separate. But at the same time, martial skills, regardless of martial art, Wing Chun, but any other martial art the same. They've got balance, they've got peripheral awareness, they've got situational awareness, they've got distance awareness, they've got the ability to react quickly, they've got the ability to control adrenaline and manage that adrenaline through into reaction rather than muscle twitches that do you no good whatsoever. There's a lot of tie-in between the two. So I think that the two worlds merge really nicely, but you've got to train the two individual aspects of it. But
Mm,
for me, one has fed the other. Whereas a lot of thing about, I don't know, some Wing Chun schools like to do Chisai competitions or full contact or sparring. I don't. My background has always been, well, because I came through the close protection route, anything we ever learnt was always situational based. We always did scenarios.
mm,
You can't learn to protect a principal getting out of a car into a hostile crowd by watching a YouTube video or something. You've literally got to park a car in a car park, get a group of people who are going to jeer and shoot, and you've got to get that person through that. And you learn by doing. So my self-defense training for my students will always be, let's go in the car park. You three go up that end. You're going to represent the attackers, and I'll brief them on what or the threat, and I'll brief them what that threat is. Everything from just blocking somebody's ability to walk past you, through to a little bit of verbal diarrhea, through to a little bit of what's a nice watch, mate? I can have a look at it have you got any money? Through to maybe attacking, but then I then brief the person or student who's going to get past that threat. You've got off the bus. This is where you are. You've got to walk past. You see these three individuals ahead. You've got to get past them. What are you going to do? And I watch their body language, and I've had people. You get some that are walkable, like arrogant, and it's like you've almost presented a threat to the three people. You're coming up that the way your body language is. And I
swagger,
even had one guy, visitor, a lovely guy, but he came up and he was walking down the what are you doing? Did you not think about putting your little rising sun headband on at the same time? It was all very so body language and scenario training to me is how people. So I like to learn in a classroom and apply in the outside world where it's dirty and it's not health and safety and there's gravel and glass and cat poo and well not necessarily cat poo but wet grass or what if it's snowing we'll go do it in the snow if it's pissing it down we'll go do it outside.
Mm,
Because that for me is how I learn everything. Now that's not the way; it's my way.
But you're replicating scenarios and again, contexts. You're trying to
As
replicate
best as you
particular
can
context.
with let's say you've got three attacks a defender with four people who know each other intimately that expect me to brief them to jump on them and lumps at them, and you also expect them to take it seriously. So it's a hard one because
Mm,
there's always that sort of people don't necessarily when I was doing it with firearms or when I was doing it with close protection teams where they'd got people who were quite threatening in their thing because that's what we needed. You don't get that in a martial arts school because they all kind of know each other.
mm,
So it's as realistic as I can make it without being real.
But it might be a good stepping stone to someone if they did want to go into that kind of line of work, right?
Yeah, or even just have some realism about their own confidence levels when faced with an uncertainty. Um, so yeah,
Mm,
so the two worlds collide for me quite a lot.
So how did you, when you were in Saudi Arabia, how did you keep training at that time, or how long were you there,
I was out there 2 years. But very luckily, we got two teams working for an eminent family. So when I got my time off, where all my friends would go into Bahrain and enjoy themselves and let loose and try not to get arrested with alcohol smelling on their breath at the border, as one of my colleagues did once and paid very badly for it, I would fly home and I'd train. So I started off training. There was a guy called Stephen TK Chan in London, back in '79 time, and he was at university at the time studying cinematography. He was a grand student of Yip Man, Chau Se Tung student, and he was teaching at the YMCA. He'd hire a room at the YMCA in Oxford Street, and I'd go train with him privately, and I'd also go train with Simon Lau in London, during that period when he was in the church, top floor of the church, and I'd just come back and train as often as I could, and I'd train with the guy out in Saudi who had trained in Hong Kong, was working on the same team. But it was very, I wasn't a great student, because they go, I'd come back and I was like, I'm trying to learn all these self-defense moves and things, and they'd stand me in a corner and ask me to do Sun in Town for half an hour. And I'm like,
Mm.
what? But I look back now and it was the best training ever. But at the time, in the frame of mind, I kind of was one of these idiots that wanted the McDonald's Wing Chun route. I wanted to learn to fight. And I'm not very big, I'm not very tall, so I kind of made it with aggression. So I train. They go, I'll do a bit of chi sao, and then and I had very little control. I'd got a purpose in mind that wasn't anybody else's purpose, and therefore I'd either get a good belting because I probably deserved it because I was too aggressive, or they just ignore me. And then over the period of time of visits, I realised that the people that were probably at the same level as me when I first started visiting, their quality of structure and shape and posture and the ability to deliver energy forward and redirect force was superior to mine, because all I tried to do was fight, 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 fight. And they'd studied the forms properly, and I suddenly then got a realization that I'm missing out here.
Mm.
And it was a bit of a light bulb moment. We all have a lot of those.
Well, it takes some humility to kind of recognize maybe this approach where you're kind of going as
Less
hard as
humility, more
possible.
having it knocked into me would probably be the. But you know what? It was all a good
Real
learning curve
feedback.
for me. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Percussion
Yeah.
technology to my head is a good way of doing it.
Well, look, we're all trying to figure out in this day and age what's real, right? And there is something about martial arts which does give you that authentic feedback of like, this is not working, no matter how much I might try to sort of, confuse myself and convince myself otherwise.
It's like
So,
Mike Tyson says, isn't it? We all have a plan till you get punched in the head.
well, exactly.
And you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
maybe my plan wasn't as good as it could have been.
exactly.
Learning curves.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, Simon Lau had a big influence on, I guess you could say British Wing Chun, and
Yeah, yeah.
it sounded like it sort of was a very people were fighting a lot, let's just say, in those times. You know what I mean? Like they would go out and they would do a lot of challenge. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what was your kind of experience of that period in sort of British Wing Chun history, if you could call it that?
It was a very turbulent time for lots of reasons. I had challenges at my school. I heard stories of, I mean, I lived in the Midlands. When I came back to the UK, I settled in the Midlands. So traveling down to London was a bit of a jaunt. So I was only going down there on weekends, do private lessons. So I wasn't really as involved in that side of it. Um, there was the Wing Chun Wars, as it was once referred to, that I kind of got inadvertently drawn into, which was a bit sad. So it was a very turbulent time, and it was non-productive. It didn't, it was the old "my dad's bigger than your dad" world, and I'm like, well, that's not why I got into it. I didn't get into it to prove my Wing Chun was better than anybody else's. If somebody says to me, "My Wing Chun is better than yours," I'm like, good, train hard, keep going. I wasn't interested in comparing, because that's not why I was there. I was there for personal improvement. Even when I started teaching, I was highly selfish. There was no people go, oh, it's really good that you teach. I go, no, it's not. It's time consuming and painful. I love it, but I didn't get into teach because I was a nice person. or a generous person. I was wholly selfish. My training, my training partners were in London when I was training with Simon Lau and stuff like that. Then when I started getting out in Hong Kong, my training partners were like, 4,500 miles away half the time. So how was I going to get training? Let's train up some pair of hands to be my training partners so they can give me feedback. And then when Master Yip Chun started coming to the UK, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to put some seminar." People go, "Oh, that's really good of you." No, it's not. My students would pay a fee for him to come across. They pay his airfare, they pay his hotel fill, they pay his food, and I'd get free training for 2 weeks. I mean, where's the selflessness in that? There's
Yeah, I
nothing to
feel
an
like you're
end.
being a bit deferential. I get this sense that you're nicer than you're sort of saying. But I like that in a way, is that because I think that not enough people teach, but maybe if they came from it from that attitude of like, you know what, I just want to keep my skills high. I want to like, I enjoy this. So I'm going to, because as you say, it's not like, it's the easiest thing in the world to teach. So maybe coming from that slightly selfish attitude gives you that motivation to keep going.
It does, and we all know that there is great reward in teaching. Seeing people coming in who have body dysmorphia, they've got lack of confidence, they've been through some rough times, they're not feeling good about themselves. Maybe they carry some injuries or disabilities or whatever you want to call it that cause them concern, and seeing that person psychologically and physically change into somebody who's not arrogant but carries a level of confidence and a level of certainty in what they can and cannot do, and seeing that interaction and the social growth within the school where they've suddenly, I always say to people, the hardest thing that you ever do is walk in the classroom for the first time. You've no idea whether we're good people or bad people. You just don't know. And the easiest thing you do is walk out and never come back. I mean, it's a doddle. It's the easiest thing on the planet. But once students gotten over that initial walking in the door and they're a bit like a rabbit in the headlights, you see them relax into it, and then they start looking at their peers and going, "Oh, that's interesting. What's that?" And if they could do it, they can do it. And I've always said to people, I feel I'm one of the best examples. And this sounds a bit egotistical. I'm sorry, but best examples of if anybody can do it, if I can, anyone. I mean, I'm 65 years old. I've got a severed hamstring. I nearly broke my back. I thought I had broke my back fast rappelling from a helicopter. So my back is in bits. My shoulder dislocates from a stupid rugby injury where I thought I could stop a prop with my extended arm when he proved me wrong. I've been stabbed in the wrist and sliced through the tendon. I've been stabbed in the thigh, and I've got a hole in one of the muscles there, and I've been shot in my kneecap, and I've got bullet wound and shrapnel in my kneecap. So if I can do it, anybody can do it, and that's what I love about Wing Chun. If you want to do something like I couldn't do Taekwondo now. I'm not flexible. I'm not. I would never be. I couldn't even do karate now. And I certainly couldn't bounce around the floor like jiu-jitsu or judo. I'd just be a mess, and I'd just be in pain all the time. But Wing Chun doesn't have. I have that limitation. Its limitation is where you take it and the route that you follow. And that's what I love about it. It's open to everybody, and everybody takes their own direction. And it's interesting. I don't know if you've experienced this, but you see on social media, some people will be like, "Oh yeah, well Wing Chun, you've got your core, and then you personalize Wing Chun, and then the moment somebody on social media does it slightly different, oh that's not right, that's not right. No, but hang on a minute, you can't have it both ways. For me, Wing Chun is a journey, and my end point isn't the end point. My students, and vice versa.
Mm. I mean, that's a good point because I think, we have experience of seeing instructors and yourself, of course, that Wing Chun keeps you, limber, keeps you young, and keeps you in a good relationship with your body. Like, I feel like, as you say, like with MMA or some other style, are you really going to be doing that in your 60s, 70s, 80s? I don't know. Like, maybe,
There aren't many that do, both my karate instructors probably stopped at the age of 45, 50 because of their joints and stuff like that. It's some of them are, I've got students who've done Muay Thai and they were very, very good and were very high performers. But then they get to the point where they can teach it, but they can't do it, or then
Mm.
their body's just letting them down. And you spent time in Hong Kong, I know that, same as myself. You've seen the elder generations. I remember your Qigong, Wang Chun Lung.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I remember meeting him in the VTAA in Hong Kong, and he wasn't a spring chicken, but my God, you couldn't touch him.
Mm,
Amazing. Master Yip Chen,
mm,
Yip Ching, Choi Shen Ting, all those, all the seniors. They were seniors for a reason. It wasn't just because they started before we did.
mm,
They've got skills and knowledge and experience. And I mean, I remember meeting Lock Yu, and not long after Lock Yu had had his heart bypass. He should have been sitting in a wheelchair, not embarrassing me in front of a group of people, going, "Oh, well, you try this and try that," and throw him. Master Yip Chen. I mean, I met him when he was 65. He was still teaching when he was 90, and I'd go
wow.
out there, and me as this sort of kind of youngish bodyguard couldn't touch him, and this guy should have been sitting patting his cat and in a wheelchair with his grandkids around him, and not embarrassing me. But I look at these teachers, and I'm like, wow, if they could do it at that age, there's hope for all of us. Brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I spoke to some Sifu Clever battalion. He yeah went to follow my Sifu One Cab Learn because he just said the way he moved. You know what I mean? It wasn't like about I don't know his inch power or like him beating up. He was just like this guy just moved so well at like in his 60s. And I was like, I want that. I want what
So look, they set the example, and the nice thing about the Wing Chun world is that the way that, and this is personal experience, but it seems to me that Grandmaster Yip Man taught each person individually, so no two people were alike, depending on their build, their age, their size, the length of training, what their focus was, even maybe what their background was, and therefore that's filtered down through the generations, and so we do have a lot of diversity. But I'm sure you don't drive the same car I do, and you probably don't wear the same aftershave, and that's exactly how life is. And that's what I love about Wing Chun. A lot of people see the differences, and I look for the commonalities, and I think that's how we should do it. I get really disillusioned with Wing Chun, the way that Wing Chun goes, when you get people going, "Oh, you don't, I don't do it like that. I don't care how if you do it differently. Tell me two things. Tell me why you do it like that, and how you get the benefit from it. And if that works for you, that's great. But instead of spending time saying that's wrong, why not spend time saying, well, I do it like this because I'm interested in that. My way isn't the right way. It's the way I was taught and the way that works for me, my body, my age, my physique, my reason for being in Wing Chun world. And it's nobody else's journey but mine. And we all have differences. And that's great. I love the differences. I love seeing how somebody does something because I learn from everybody and everything because that's what life is all about. It's a journey. Um, but when they spend time and I'm sure you've experienced it yourself. Oh, I wouldn't do it like that. I wouldn't do. Well, no, you wouldn't. I
it?
get that's brilliant, but I do. And if you want to see, ask me why. I will tell you why it works for me. Might not work for you.
Mm.
You
I
know.
mean, how do you, in your mind now, and obviously, it can change, but what do you think the, how would you define Wing Chun? As in, what are we trying to do, as Wing Chun practitioners?
I think Wing Chun is a structured set of tools built around the human anatomy that uses human anatomy to its most efficient. And if we understand how our bodies work effectively, we can then defend ourselves. So to me, martial arts is about an individual learning to position their body structurally with the right amount of skeletal support and the minimum amount of muscular support to be able to carry out a task. And if we learn to control ourselves, once we're in control of ourselves, we can position ourselves to control the threat.
Mm,
So as a series of body mechanics, and it's a mental state. It starts with the brain. It's no coincidence the first one called Sunim Tao, the way the little idea, because it all starts here, not here. And if we understand it, and I hate the term, I don't hate the term, but if we become Wing Chun, if it becomes so natural, a lot of people can go out the side and jump in a manual drive car, and they can drive down the shops, and they don't even think about it anymore. But they didn't drop out of the womb doing it.
mm,
Wing Chun is the same. If you're driving a manual car, you're doing one thing with one foot on the clutch while you're doing something else with the accelerator, while you're adjusting the gears, whilst you're looking out and not looking what's going on here. You're looking outside. So one hand's doing one thing, one hand's doing another, while the feet are doing something completely separate. Yet they're all coordinated together, and they're doing it on a subconscious level. Training is to move. learn something on a conscious level and train it to it becomes a subconscious response. And if we that's Wing Chun to me. It doesn't matter, whether it's Tan or Bong, they become a little bit superfluous. Each tool has a purpose and they can work in several scenarios. There's probably one that's the right tool at the right time. And then it's just having that awareness of his surroundings. And, once you try, and I'm sure you experience all the time, once you've trained to the point where you're looking inside, you then start looking outside. You start taking in the bigger surroundings. So you read body language and you read threats at a distance. And you'd be walking down the street and you're like, "Oh, I'm going to cross the road," and you're not making a big thing about it, but you just spot something. You're like, "I don't need to. There's another pavement. There's another side of the road. I don't need to walk through that group of individuals because I'm not. I don't like their body language. It's just a little bit tense." You sit well, I don't drink, but if you sit in a pub and you start to feel it boiling off, there's another pub, there's another day, there's another place to be. So avoidance becomes part of what we do. It's that, and that's our self-defense. Self-defense on the outside, and the physical training is your self-defense on the inside. So I think it's a whole holistic thing is Wing Chun. And
Mm,
that's not to decry any other martial art. I don't study any other martial art. They probably all say the same thing, and I'm sure they all offer some great stuff. I only spend my world in Wing Chun.
mm. Yeah, I was actually just yesterday looking into a little bit of kind of knife defense, and they said, yes, the people who protect themselves the best are the people who recognize danger early, because things can go like very quickly. Incidents
Yes.
can happen over like seconds. And it's the people who actually, slightly moved away to start with or slightly went behind a barrier or, those people. I think according to like some CCTV footage, those are the people that were, best kept themselves safe. Is that very initial?
Knight felt is, I mean, it's a really big thing at the moment from the point of view of the threat in the world, and it's an interesting one because I was taught knife self-defense without ever using a knife, and the reason for that is because um, if and this is just the close protection world side of it where the two merge, I guess. The view there is that when you're training with somebody, if you don't see the knife, it doesn't matter whether you do knife self-defense or not. They can walk up and stab you in the chest, stab you in the ribs, and I don't care what martial art on the planet you've ever done or whether you're using the best close protection off in the world, you're going to get stabbed. That shit happens. But if you want to train for it, you can't train against somebody who's going, "I'm going to stab you like this," right? Because that's not how it happened. It doesn't come out. There is not necessarily any pre-warning. So basically, the concept that I was always taught is that a knife and a fist have exactly the same context coming forward. They're only variations on the way in. So a knife coming towards you can cause you a vast amount of damage. But a punch coming towards you, landing in your throat, or it can also kill you. So both are dangerous going forwards. And when you intercept it, we never intercept a punch around the hand. We always intercept it around the forearm. So does it matter whether it's sharp and shiny and glints in the moonlight, or it's a set of knuckles? Because we're always going to intercept it here. Where the variance is the punch won't hurt you on the way back, and a blade might
Okay.
hurt you on the way back. So on the way in, treat it like it's unarmed because you don't the problem I guess, and this is being a little detrimental to knife self-defense as an art, because it is an art, it's a separate art, is that a lot of people go, "Oh, well, if somebody comes with a punch, technique A, but if they've got a knife, technique B." And I'm like, well, at what point do you decide? It looks like A B A B A B okay. You can't have a different defense if it's armed or unarmed because you don't have time to differentiate. So
Mm,
treat everything as if it's the most dangerous thing on the planet. And as
mm,
I say, on the way in, they can both kill you. On the way out, one will do a lot more damage than the other. So
mm,
it's the secondary technique you do that's probably more critical than the initial technique. And
mm,
that's just me. I always try and break things down to the lowest common denominator. It sounds very simplistic. It ain't. It's like I had a conversation recently with somebody about, yeah, the problem with Wing Chun is it doesn't have ground self-defense. And I went, "You're right." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, the thing is, the Chinese never fall over, you know." And he went, "What?" I went, "No, you complete idiot." But what I was trying to explain to him, and this is again, this is my definition. It's not Wing Chun's definition. It's just me, how I look at it. Ground self-defense is an art, and it's an art in its own right. So Wing Chun doesn't have ground self-defense because we don't spend time doing that. We spend time doing this. But then for me, Wing Chun, and this is the difference for me. Wing Chun fights from the ground. So if I can do chain punches standing up, I can do them kneeling down. I can do them lying on my back. If I can cover
Mm,
my center line standing up, I can do it leaning over somebody, or I can
mm,
do it if they're leaning over me, or I can do it on one knee, or I can do it lying on my back. What I
mm,
don't want to learn is this is how you fight standing up. Oh, and this is how you fight lying down, because it
mm,
becomes a separate art. So to me, I can use Bu, I can use Tarn, I can use Bong Lap, I can use center line punches, I can use any triangulated structure I like. Lying down, kneeling up, facing downwards, facing upwards, getting up, getting down, being knocked
mm,
over. I was trying to differentiate. Wing Chun fights from the ground, but we don't have ground fighting. And
mm,
I know that's my definition,
mm,
but that's how I try and portray it because you can't have technique A stood up, technique B lying down. It's the same thing as the knives. You've got it's got to be the same toolkit because that's our specialisms.
mm.
Use what you've got. Don't reinvent the wheel. The art
Mm,
of rip shit and panic didn't do me any good as a teenager on the bus when I stood against the bully. It's not going to help me now.
mm. But you would try and get to your feet in an ideal situation, would you? I mean,
Absolutely,
you wouldn't
absolutely.
stay on the ground and do Wing Chun from
Yeah,
the
I mean,
ground.
when you learn to drive a car, you don't learn how to crash into a tree first. You learn how to avoid it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to spend a lot of my time learning how not to fall over, but I have to accept that, I can trip, I can be knocked, I can be pushed, I can be rugby tackled, I can be pulled from behind by their mate. You know, shit happens, deal with it. But this is why
Mm.
scenario is important because you take people out in a car park with the car park where I teach got massive amount of gravel, and two of the guys were doing they were just doing cheese out training, just a bit of a free cheese out training. He slipped over on the gravel and fell over, and I'm like, get up. If you don't, I'm going to kick you in the ribs. He got up quickly. I wouldn't have kicked him in the ribs. I'd have gone for his testicles, but that's a whole different story. The point is, he fell over, and it happens. Deal with it.
Yeah. So I wanted to go back to the transition from training in the UK. How
Hmm.
did you go from training in the UK to Hong Kong? Like how did that happen?
So Matthew Chun had been coming across to the UK since 1985. I was very fortunate to meet him, and he came to my school in 1985, 86. Came twice a year all the way through. And it just so happened in 1989 that he'd done a seminar, and I was lucky enough. I spoke no Chinese at all at the time. I speak very little now. I get a face slapped in three different Chinese dialects though, which is always good. But I was lucky enough. I got some really good Chinese students that they spoke Cantonese and Hakka, which is what Sifu Chen speaks. And we were just chatting, and he basically said to me, "Look, you really need to come to Hong Kong to progress because there are things that I can see in you that can be improved, but a seminar is not the place." I mean, he stayed at my house a few times, and um, I'll tell you a funny story about that though, just aside. So I used to put him up in a hotel in Chinatown in Birmingham, which he loved. He could go across. There was lots of Chinese supermarkets but one day he said to me, he'd come to my house, do some private lessons stuff. And he was like, "Oh, I'd love to stay at your house sometimes." "Oh, okay, next time you come stay at my house." And in Sifu's flat in Hong Kong, he's got like a shower head, but it's like over the toilet. It's not a bathroom as such, because you know how small the complexes are there. And it was the local government housing place. Choi, you're familiar with Hong Kong. Choi Hong you lived in, or lived in, out by the airport, back of Kai Tak.
Oh,
As it was.
nice.
And so very small little flats. But as I said, just a shower. And it was like, he'd gone it was at my house doing his training, went to us, "You've got a bath." "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd love to have a bath. I'd love to come and stay at your house." So, okay. So I invited to come and stay. He got in the bath. 5 hours later, he's still in the bath. And the house that I lived in at the time had one toilet, and guess where it was?
In the
So I'm
bathroom.
using my neighbour's toilet. So he can use the bath. Anyway, I
Wow.
digress.
Wow.
So he would come across and stuff. So we went out for a meal one day, and he just basically said, "Look, there are things I can help you with." He said, "You must understand," and he said the most important statement I ever heard. He said, "Look, you are 20, whatever you were. You're a professional bodyguard. You're okay. You know how to do this, this, and this. I can't teach you how to fight, but what I can do is I can teach you your structure, your shape, how to use your energy, how to switch energy on and off. I can polish those tools that will enable you to do what you need to do better. And I was fascinated by that because I was kind of used to visit. I mean, I've done it a few times, gone around a lot of Wing Chun schools, visiting schools and stuff like that. And when I moved from, I won't name names, but from one teacher to another to try to improve myself, they'd all go, "Oh yeah, show me a Wing Chun." So they're like, "Okay." So you go through Sinim Town, they all go, "Yeah, that's not right. It's not right. You're doing that wrong." And I'm like, "Here we go." So you start again. And Master Chen never did that. He kind of, like anything, show me Sinim Town. So I went through Sinim Town and I was waiting for that, and that's not right. And he was like, "Well," he said, "I can see you've trained really hard. I don't understand why you do some of the moves the way you do, but we'll discuss that. I'll show you what I do and I'll explain why you do it. And then it's up to you whether you adopt that or not." I was like, I like that approach. And it just, his personal approach worked for me. So I got on a plane, went out there. The first time I was out there for 6.5 weeks. I was very, very fortunate. He just retired from work, so he was free all day. So I literally trained 9 hours a day at his tiny little flat, and I did that twice a year for the first sort of 6 or 7 years of travel. Um, and it just turned my world upside down. Things that I things that I thought I was doing right, a slight adjustment, a slight movement, a slight position, and it just changed how I did things. And his teaching style worked for me. It was very, very much hands-on because he spoke no English. I spoke no Chinese, and during the day there was no translator. So it was very positional and just him showing me and doing stuff. Working on the dummy, or we kind of do forms for the first 3 hours in the morning. We do chi sao for the 3 hours of the lunchtime, and on the evening, do the bat cham do, or we do the wooden dummy. Never did the pole. Never did the pole until probably about 6 years in when we started going. And somebody said to me, "Why did you not do the pole? Was it not important?" I went, "No, if I'd have done the pole, I'd have killed four of his neighbours walking past it. His flat just wasn't big enough or practical enough to do that."
Mm,
Um, and personally, I'll be honest, I don't have a love for the pole.
mm,
I'm not a great lover of the pole. I see its benefits, but I don't love the pole form. I think you
mm.
should have curtains hanging off it in somebody's living room. But that's a personal. I've
No,
got students that love it. I've
yeah.
got students that really enjoy it. I'll be honest, I train it enough to maintain the skill to be able to teach it properly as
Hmm.
best as I can. But yeah, me and the pole don't have a great relationship. I love watching people do them. I know what the benefits are. I'll train it to get the benefits, but I don't love it.
Mm, mm. So, I
That's
mean,
just
big picture, like, what do you think he changed most? I mean, can you give me an example of like what you feel changed in your Wing Chun,
yeah.
having
I
trained
was
with him
I
so
was
much?
an aggressive little sod. I thought that power was everything. So I was too tense. And he taught me to realize that, if you create tension, let's say when I was doing time sound, because I wanted to be strong, because I'm smaller than a lot of people. I'm 5'7.5". Don't forget the half. And I'm not big. And I was training with people that certainly in the UK were much bigger than me, and any of the threats could be bigger than me as well. So I felt I had to be stronger than anybody else. So I'd be like, for example, in Tansau, my bicep will be engaged. Well, of course, the bicep's a contractor. So A, it was locking out a long lever, which meant that a small amount of movement on my wrist and I'd end up losing my posture. And secondly, I was locked. So then as soon as I'd done the, so let's say Tansau, if I wanted to react, I then had to disengage my biceps to be able to allow me to move. And he taught me that how to use the structure from the floor rather than the power from the shoulder. And he taught me that I can relax the bicep off because the moment I make contact with somebody, I don't even need any tension of biceps. I'm not holding myself against gravity anymore. So therefore, the sort of the equilibrium in the tricep meant that although it was under pressure, it wasn't pushing, but it was ready to spring. So as soon as somebody disengaged, Lutzat Chik Chung took over, and I was flying forward without even having to think about it. So he learnt me to disengage the muscles that were unnecessary, utilize the skeleton as the structure rather than a locked out mechanism, and use a shorter lever and understand how to do that, why to do that, and when to do it. And it just completely changed my Wing Chun.
Mm, wow. So basically using as you said earlier, bodily structure over muscular
Yeah.
strength and tension kind of thing.
So the question is not what I gained from Wing Chun, it's actually what I lost that mattered the most.
Mm, mm. Yeah, take what you don't need. Basically,
Yeah,
yeah, get rid of
get rid
what you
of
don't
the
need.
mental tension, get rid of the physical tension, and
Mm,
then before you know it, you're moving fluidly, you're
mm.
reacting quicker, your responses are faster because you're not locked in.
Mm. And do you think that feeds into, I mean, talking about sort of martial arts, sort of more broadly, do you think that feeds into how we evolve, how our personalities evolve from being young? Like, does it, when you have to kind of shut off a lot of that tension, does it mean you're a bit more humble in your personality? Does it change your personality, is what I'm trying to say,
Yeah, no,
as we do
absolutely it does.
martial arts?
It makes you think of things in a very different way. That, I mean, if you think about it as a child, a child falls down the stairs. They've got green bones. They're very relaxed. They flop down. They get up. They've got no injury. An adult
Mm,
falls downstairs. They tense up by default and they break things. That tension is an inhibitor. An adult drunk will fall downstairs is not tense up and be fine. Well, more
mm,
likely. It's that tension that and that tension is partly fear. That tension is not knowing how to respond. And so a lot of our training, I find is mental training. It's about preparation for again scenarios. If a lot of our reactions are automatic because we've trained in the subconscious reaction rather than a conscious reaction. So a silly scenario is for example, if you were teaching in your classroom and a group of lads came in, you know, quite a lot of the seniors would respond defensively and what's going on. Okay. If, however, three green blob Martians beamed into your room with ray guns, we'd all be like, because your brain wouldn't have an idea how to process that information, we'd be go tense. And that's what happens we talk about fight or flight as if fight or flight are one's good, one's bad. Now, fight or flight to me are both good in the right place, but freeze, that's your danger. When you freeze, and that's where fear takes over. And fear is because you're not conditioned to the situation, or you're not familiar with how to respond, or you've never faced that threat before. So, if you take something as stupid as the twin towers getting hit by airplanes, nobody trained for that, but a lot of people got out. Most of the people lost their
mm,
lives were first responders going in doing their job, which was very, very sad. But a lot of the public got out because, like a lot of people, in offices, you've had fire drills, and you sit there and the fire drill goes off and you kind of like going on for longer than 20 seconds. So you control alt delete so they can't see you playing solitaire and you get your coffee because, you don't lose a good cup of coffee. You put your coat on because it might be cold. And you then look around and follow the troops like sheep down the fire thing and sit outside and the man with the clipboard that's got his 15 minutes of importance with his yellow jacket comes and takes your names, and then you go back in and carry on with your day. And you don't take it seriously. But when
mm,
those planes hit and fires started and everything happened, a lot of people instinctively followed that route out and they got out
mm.
because they'd been trained, even though they hadn't taken it seriously. And that's the thing. Once you've gone through a process of cause and effect in your brain, you can go towards. We do it when we're doing driver lessons. How many people? I said to my students, how many people practice their emergency stop once they've passed their driving test? People don't. But if somebody steps out, there's a good chance that you're going to hit the brake, steer in the right direction, etc., etc. That makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Um, and that to me is what cause and effect is, and that's what training's all about. Training's all about that cause and effect. You learn a
Mm,
reason for doing a technique, whether it's a Tan, a Bong, a Pak Sao jump, it doesn't matter what it is. And we learn it through Chi Sao because Chi Sao for me is a good place to practice semi-unpredictable. Yes, you've got a starting point. Um, but to me, Chi Sao is not a fight. It's a learning process and it's a place to experiment because, it gives people, it's like playing chess. You've got two people have got exactly the same tool set. If I find the bong sound position advantageous, a few seconds later, somebody else do bong sound. It gives you the same tools, the same rules, the same range, but then after that, things become very unpredictable. You know,
mm, mm.
and there are no rules. Somebody said to me once, "Why can't I do a roundhouse kick in Chi Sao?" I said, "You can, but when you lift your leg up, I'm gonna take your supporting leg out, or I'm gonna punch you in the testicles, or I'm gonna knock you on your ass. You can do
Mm,
it. It's not that there's a
mm.
rule that you can't. It's just stupid. You
Yeah,
know,
every solution has some weakness to it. It might
I
just be a
remember
huge
training with
weakness.
I won't mention his name. I remember training with a friend of mine, and he was like, "Yeah, but," and it was a taekwondo. It was a really good taekwondo. And he was awesome, but he wanted to step into my world a little bit, which was his mistake. And he was like, "Oh yeah, but you've seen our taekwondo kicks. I can have 4 or 5 people curled up in a ball. I can run and do a jumping side kick over them. What do you think?" And I'm like, "It's a fantastic technique. It's amazing, but it's no good." "Yeah, but what would Wing Chun do about it?" I said, "Well, I can't tell you till you do it, 'cause I don't know." So, like an idiot, he was like, "Try it." So he did. He ran at me. And it was like a cartoon character. He ran at me, jumped in the air, beautiful side kick, leg fully extended. So I caught his ankle. So his ankle stayed in my hand while his arse. Now, apparently, when you land on your coccyx from about 4 foot as you're traveling,
Ouch.
it's not as funny as I thought it was.
Mm,
It
mm.
disintegrates your sense of humor, apparently.
He was not happy.
You know, certainly wasn't as funny as I thought it was a lot funnier. But he walked tall for a while, so maybe I helped his posture. I don't know. Um, but it's understanding your framework, isn't it? That's what Wing Chun's about for me.
Yeah, definitely. And as sort of a slightly broader question, do you think that martial arts has affected how you deal with life stresses in terms of just any, life, always throwing
Oh,
up stuff?
100%.
Hmm.
100%. I think we use the term the center line as being the shortest route, but I take that in life. I don't, I used to be very, when I was, I don't know, 16, 17, doing GCSEs or trying to talk to girls or trying to make friends or trying to do something. I was always, like a lot of people, it's like, "Well, what do you think of me? Oh, I'm stressed about this." And I used to worry about stuff that I look at it now and I go, why are you worried about that? You were so distracted and going off, your brain was at a tangent doing stuff. You never got the task at hand done. Um, just so it A gave me focus, gave me the ability to focus my brain on a task or tasks. It gave me the ability to multitask. My wife might disagree, but I can wee and whistle at the same time, so I think I'm good. Um, but no, it gives you the ability to multitask and do things quite well. It gives you the ability to bring it down to its common denominators and just deal with the problem ahead of you, and have that ability to and take the shortest route, whether it's my job or whether it's driving a car, whether it's dealing with a problem, whether it's writing a book, whether it's anything. It just it so it martial arts. Well, I can only say Wing Chun in my terms. Just focus. It allows you to focus. It gives you that sense of balance. It gives you the ability to balance. I think through martial arts, I've got a much better work-life balance than I ever would have done otherwise. I don't stress about things, because, like a lot of people, when I first started learning Chi Sao, I get more angry at myself for not being able to do something. That then created mental tension, which created physical tension, which made exacerbating my problems because I was then moving like a complete gibbering idiot because my brain wasn't focused, my body was not doing what it was told and what I thought it was going to do, and what I thought I was doing was not actually what I was doing, and it was horrible. Um, and it's brought me back to focus on the task at hand. It's brought me back to be able to not worry about things that aren't important. So my whole mentality and attitude change. I don't get stressed anymore. Things don't stress me because if I can't change it, I'm not going to put any focus on it. But I'm going to focus on the things that I can change, which might be training, it might be work, it might be family, it might be holidays, it might be whatever life throws at you. So I
Mm.
think I think it does, it really does help you give that focus when when I'm teaching Sunim Tao. I try and explain to people that, the little idea is not just about improving your hand position or your structure. It's about turning off the world. We live in a very stressful world. I teach a couple of very high profile businessmen. I don't do it now, but pre-COVID, I'd go into their office for an hour and I would teach them Sunim Tao. They don't even know it had a martial purpose because that wasn't that's what they wanted. They wanted something that they would just have to think about what their body was doing. So they turn off their emails and turn off their phone. And for that 1 hour of the day, nothing else mattered. And that's
Mm.
all they wanted. They wanted the idea of getting into a fight or defense or anything was not in their agenda. They wanted stress management. So
Mm.
Sunim Tower became for them their stress management. For other people, it's how you improve your body for structure and fighting. For others, it's a bit of a combination of everything. It's a mental health well-being. During COVID, I mean, we all suffered badly with COVID. Um, I did something I never thought I'd ever do in my entire life. I taught online on video, and I found that actually it really worked because people were much more focused on what was in front of them and not distracted.
Mm,
So I didn't enjoy it. I've got to be perfectly honest with you, but it was a means to an end, and it kept people training when when we weren't allowed to be face to face. But I can't. Before that, if somebody said to me, "Oh, have you ever thought about teaching Wing Chun online?" I can't do that. It's impossible. But actually, needs must. It was okay. But
mm.
I found that the form, we obviously we trained forms because I found Chi Sao through a screen a bit challenging personally. But I did things like set up a pole in my garage where I was teaching, and I stood behind the pole, and that became the centre line for everybody to see, so they
Oh,
could see I
wow.
was tracking up and down the centre line, and I was moving up and down, and we had lots of conversation. We did a bit of dummy when because we could do a bit of dummy work or a bit of knives work. There's things like interaction and drilling and that weren't appropriate. So I kind of I can kind of see the benefit of the stress management. It gave people focus during COVID to do stuff. So different things for different courses of learning and different focus. So the mental focus and what you get out of it is kind of depends on what you want.
Mm. No, but I think those 2 points especially, we're living in a world where people's attention is very scattered. So it not only gives you something like one thing to focus on, but also, as you say, the perspective aspect. At the moment, everything's about money. Everything's just about, just getting more money. It seems like a lot, but it's like this gives you that perspective. Like, no, this isn't just what life's about. Do you know what I mean? It's about
Well,
being able to focus.
you've been to Hong Kong, lived in Hong Kong. You know what it's like. Chin money is
Yeah, yeah, it's
the
everything.
driver.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You got more. You get more training in the Western Wing Chun school than you do in a Hong Kong school because people can't always leave work and can't be there, and
Mm,
there's expectation to if the lights are on, you're still working, and it's a very different environment. You
mm,
know, don't get me wrong. There's Westerners that are intermittent as well. Obviously, it's not a Western versus Hong Kong thing, but it's like in Hong Kong that they drift in and drift out. Um, they don't necessarily have the better life balance for living. People always go, "Oh, Wing Chun in Hong Kong must be the best." It's like, well, can be, but it's
yeah.
what you put into it is what you get out of, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I talked to Super Clever about the difference between Western and Eastern learning, and that's maybe another conversation. But I wanted to sort of finish by asking you, like, what do you think is important for Wing Chun to stay, I guess, a high level or important, for the next 100 years or something? Like, what do you think is important to kind of keep it
For
going?
me, tradition is important, and when I say tradition, I'm not on about people go, "Oh, who's your teacher?" Well, does it? They're not there. People are not. I see a lot of people advertising Yip Man Wing Chun and this Wing Chun and that Wing Chun. It's like, well, I couldn't. I personally couldn't. I wouldn't advertise Yip Chun Wing Chun. It's not there. It ain't him. It's me, and you get what I'm WYSIWYG, and what you see is what you get. For me, tradition is maintaining the core aspects of Wing Chun and not diluting it by adding stuff in and being honest. People ask me questions, and there's some questions students will ask, and I get like all teachers get bombarded with questions. There are questions I get asked that I don't know the answer to, or I can't give a thorough. I remember somebody saying to me, "Oh, when you're doing the forms, we notice you start with the left hand first. Why do we start with the left hand first?" And I think they're expecting some yin and yang, deep philosophical, female is stronger than male and light and dark and yin. And I remember asking Master Yip Chun exactly the same question. Why do you start with the left? And he went, "Do you know what? Because if you started with the right, you'd be saying to me, why do you start with the right?" And that's as much as I ever got out of it. But as an example of that, I've heard Wing Chun instructors go, "It's because you do one more
Mm.
movement you start with the left punch because you do one more punch than you do if you do." And I'm like, no, that's you taking a square peg and trying to hammer it into a round hole to try to sound more knowledgeable than there's nothing wrong with going, "I don't know. That's just how it's done." I don't get me wrong. That's how it's done. It's never been a really good answer for me. I remember being doing a seminar for somebody and sitting down during the break, and the assistant instructor of the class was next to me. One of his students came up to me and said, "Oh, Sifu, I'm just trying to train this, and what do I need to do?" And he went, "You need to train harder." Oh, thank you, Sifu, and off they went. And I looked at him and I said to him, "Look, no disrespect, but that is a shit answer. That's like walking past a river, seeing somebody drown and go, 'You need to swim.' It's not an answer. So it's traditional. It's an awful answer to anybody. There's a reason why thing I love about Wing Chun is the reason why we do what we do. Everything has purpose. Even if it's like when you're doing the Faksai in Sinim Tower, why do you bring your arms back like this? If you stood like that, look, you're doing an impression of a bird. You've got to get your arms back to bring your arms to the center. It hasn't got a purpose, but it's got a reason for being there.
Mm,
And that's what I love, and that's what I want to preserve. I think if we preserve the why we do it, and we preserve the core, then I give the analogy of a tree. I teach the roots and the trunk of a tree. I want my student to explore to the branches. What I don't want anybody to do is become an instructor, and their end point of training becomes the beginning point of their teaching, because then they're teaching from a perspective, not giving the student the same chance that they had of going on. So we, as instructors, we teach the root and the core of this tree, and we expect our students to explore. But I expect anybody, I would like to think anybody teaches from that same root and core, and give everybody the same journey chance that I've had, that they've had. So we're not ending up a million miles away from the beginnings.
mm,
So maintaining, the Sunim Tao, the Chamkyu, the Buji, the Mukyangjong, the core elements of it, without trying to add stuff in. I've seen Wing Chun adding ground fighting or high kicks or stick fighting or something, and it's like, well, if you went back 250 years into the past and picked up an Oxford English dictionary, you wouldn't find the word Bluetooth or iPhone or iPad, or you wouldn't find, AI, artificial intelligence, in the dictionary. But when the new technology comes up, we didn't add a few more letters on the end of our 26. We just recombined what we had to suit. And that's, to me, is what the core of Wing Chun should be. We've got a
mm.
toolkit. It's as adaptable as you ever need it to be. If you understand it, let's preserve it. And then Wing Chun will go on forever.
So a balance between tradition, but also allowing different body types, people to explore their own sort of
100%.
way,
100%.
basically. Yeah. Lovely. Well, thanks so much. I mean, is there anything you wanted to say about if people want to train with you, or like, are you doing any seminars, or are there like, where's
No,
your school? Or
I don't teach for a living. I've got a very small little group. I chose 1982 when I started teaching, not to teach for a living, and that's purely and simply because A, I've got a good job. B, I pay the tax man way too much money as it is, and I also don't want to be chasing the pound notes. I've got friends and colleagues who teach for a living, and they struggle because when the living's good, they buy a new car, and then students drop off, and then they stress about stuff because they've got. I don't take any money out of my class, so I'm not looking to promote my class.
Mm,
My feedback to anybody watching this is Wing Chun is a fabulous martial art for everybody. Find your local Wing Chun school. Go to your local Wing Chun school. If I can help people go to Wing Chun, I've done my job. My school's irrelevant. It can be your school, it can be anybody else that's put the hard work, people like yourself who put the hard work in, the graft and the effort to learn their trade, to share their trade. That's where I want people to go.
well, very well said. Well, thank you so much, Sifu, and hopefully we can do this again one day.
Yeah, and where are you based?
I'm in London.
Okay,
Yeah.
central, north, left.
North. Yeah, yeah. Sort of
Okay,
Highgate area. Yeah.
so to people watching this podcast, London, that's where you should go.
Well, thank
Ring
you.
Chun is everything. So, and if I do get down to the big smoke long enough, because
Yeah.
my work office is in London, so in central London. But if I get down there long enough, let's hook up. 'Cause for me, Ring Chun is a big family. I love, like when I travel, I always contact people. And is there any Ring Chun school out there? So I met people in Bali and Thailand, and for me, it's a big family. And if we share our commonalities, we all travel together. We all benefit from Wing Chun because it's a beautiful art.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, please consider rating us 5 stars on iTunes so that we can spread the word about the benefits of Kung Fu.